In Genoa City, destruction rarely arrives with a warning loud enough for anyone to prepare. It begins in quieter ways, in the pause before a spouse decides whether forgiveness is weakness, in the look of a son who realizes the family name that raised him may have been built on lies, in the tightening silence around a man who has spent his whole life believing he could manipulate danger only to discover danger has been studying him in return. Over the next 2 weeks, every grudge that has been simmering beneath polished smiles and family loyalty threatens to rupture at once. Old betrayals become fresh weapons. Buried history claws its way to the surface. Desire turns into leverage. Loyalty becomes a liability. And the people who once believed they controlled the board are about to learn that a trap is most effective when its victims mistake it for their own decision. This is not just a season of conflict. It is a season of moral collapse, where every private weakness is about to be dragged into the light, and every attempt to protect what remains may only hasten the ruin. Jack stands at the center of one of the most humiliating storms of his life, and what makes it unbearable is not simply Diane's refusal to forgive him, but the fact that her refusal is justified enough to wound him more deeply than any enemy attack ever could. Jack has always known how to fight when the danger was external. He knows how to confront Victor, how to counter a corporate threat, how to turn family conflict into strategy. What he has never handled well is the kind of shame that leaves him alone with himself. Diane's rejection does not come across as temporary anger to him. It feels like a verdict. A brutal confirmation that one reckless breach of trust can poison years of hard-earned devotion. The more Jack tries to repair the damage in his mind, the more he realizes that love is not restored by intention. It is restored by consistency, sacrifice, and patience, all things that feel agonizingly slow to a man who is terrified that his marriage may already be slipping beyond recovery. Yet Jack's pain does not make him softer, it makes him more dangerous. Instead of quieting the rage already burning inside him toward Victor, Diane's coldness intensifies it. He begins to see Victor not merely as a rival, but as a symbol of everything that has corrupted his life, his marriage, and his peace. The humiliation in his personal life starts bleeding into his appetite for revenge. In Jack's mind, restoring control over one part of his world becomes tied to destroying the man he believes has helped rot the rest of it. This is where his internal fracture grows most severe. One side of him wants to prove to Diane that he can become steadier, wiser, less reactive. The other side wants blood, retaliation, and the savage satisfaction of making Victor feel exposed for once. The conflict between those impulses does not make Jack passive. It makes him unstable in a more sophisticated way. A man smiling through family conversations while quietly sketching out retaliation in his head. Patty's renewed obsession with Jack only worsens that instability because she embodies everything he wants to leave behind. Chaos, loss of control, the terrifying possibility that old madness never stays buried. Patty does not simply want Jack's affection. She wants possession, validation, and the triumph of proving that she can still insert herself into the center of his life no matter how fiercely she has been rejected. Her fixation thrives on emotional vulnerability, and she senses that Jack is wounded. A wounded man, to Patty, is not someone to pity. He is an opening. What makes her more threatening now is that she is no longer operating as an isolated storm. She is beginning to attract allies, people with their own grievances, their own bitterness, their own reasons to believe that Jack Abbott deserves to be cornered and stripped of his confidence. Patty's obsession becomes more than a personal menace. It becomes part of a larger ecosystem of resentment closing in around him. Diane sees more than Jack realizes. Her refusal to accept his apology is not only about punishing him, it is also about forcing him to live with uncertainty the way she has had to live with it. Diane has spent too much of her life fighting to be taken seriously, to be seen as more than her past mistakes, more than the woman everyone expected to fail. Jack was supposed to be the place where that fight ended. When trust cracks there, the damage is more intimate than scandal. It strikes at her most private fear. The fear that stability is always temporary, that happiness is a beautiful thing built on thin ice. Diane's anger is sharpened by humiliation, but underneath it lies grief. She is grieving not only what Jack did, but what his failure suggests about how fragile their future may have always been. Even when she keeps her distance, even when she turns cold, she is not untouched. That is why her pain has an edge. She is holding herself together through discipline, through pride, through the stubborn refusal to be the first one to beg for repair. But every day that Jack remains in emotional freefall makes it harder for her to trust that he is fighting for the marriage rather than merely fighting against his own guilt. Elsewhere in Genoa City, Kane is constructing a different kind of war, one dressed not in emotional desperation but in calculated ambition. His campaign against Victor is not simply business strategy. It is personal, corrosive, and rooted in the belief that power in this town has been monopolized for too long by one man whose brutality is too often mistaken for strength. Kane wants to bring Victor down, but his desire is contaminated by ego. He does not merely want justice or balance. He wants the glory of being the man who succeeded where others only complained. That vanity makes him reckless in subtle ways, especially when he recruits people as if they are pieces, rather than individuals with consciences, histories, and breaking points. His attempt to use Holden as a tool to manipulate Claire becomes a critical miscalculation. Kane assumes that everyone can be seduced by enough pressure, enough incentive, enough rationalization. He underestimates the insult embedded in his request. For Holden, the proposition is not just unethical. It is demeaning. It suggests that his value lies in deception, in infiltration, in becoming the kind of man who earns his place by exploiting trust rather than deserving it. When Holden refuses, what hardens inside him is not just disapproval of Kane, but a clearer understanding of how easily powerful men confuse strategy with morality. Holden has already spent too much of his life feeling like an outsider standing near truths that were never fully his. Being asked to become a spy in someone else's vendetta hits a nerve deeper than Kane understands. That is why Holden's likely decision to tell Claire the truth carries such emotional force. He is not simply exposing Kane's scheme. He is choosing the kind of man he wants to be. Yet that choice comes with consequences. By being honest, Holden risks becoming entangled in the war rather than escaping it. Claire, already living under the shadow of Victor's influence and the complicated expectations attached to being a Newman, is forced to confront a terrifying reality. Even the people circling her with charm or opportunity may be approaching her as an access point rather than as a person. Holden's confession may reassure her on one level, but it also strips away another layer of innocence. She begins to understand just how much of Genoa City's political and emotional warfare is really about ownership, about who can control which relationship, which secret, which line of loyalty. Kane's plan does not merely target Victor. It contaminates everyone connected to Victor, and Claire becomes one more casualty of that contamination. Phyllis, always alert to opportunity, watches Kane's campaign with the instincts of someone who recognizes both ambition and weakness when they stand in front of her. She tries to provoke temptation in him, perhaps because temptation has always been one of the most efficient ways to expose the truth of a person's motives. If Kane wants power badly enough, then perhaps he will also want distraction, validation, a reckless ally who understands how far revenge can carry a person before it destroys them. But Phyllis is no longer simply a seductress enjoying the game. Her interest in Kane is laced with calculation and hunger. She knows what it is to feel pushed to the fringes, underestimated, discarded when the family or corporate narrative no longer has immediate use for her. There is a fury in Phyllis that never fully dies. It only changes shape. If Kane refuses her advances or rejects alliance, he risks awakening the part of Phyllis that hates irrelevance more than rejection itself. For Phyllis, being denied is not embarrassing. It is provocative. It can turn curiosity into antagonism in an instant. Then comes the return of Malcolm and Stephanie, and with them the kind of secret that does not merely upset current relationships but rewrites the emotional architecture of the past. Genoa City is a place that feeds on buried history, but there is something uniquely explosive about a truth tied to parentage, identity, and the years people can lose by living inside a lie they never agreed to. If Holden is indeed connected to Malcolm and Stephanie in a hidden way, then the revelation is not simply dramatic, it is cruel. It means that choices made long ago, perhaps out of fear, shame, self-protection, or emotional cowardice, have been shaping Holden's life from a distance without his consent. It means Malcolm may be forced to reckon with the possibility that the life he could have had was altered by silence. It means Stephanie's past is no longer an old wound she can privately manage. It becomes an active force with consequences in the present. Lily is drawn into this maelstrom with a special burden reserved for those who care too much and know too well how fragile family can be. When she receives the news that something enormous is about to break open, she does not react merely with surprise. She reacts with dread. Lily has lived long enough in a family shaped by ambition, grief, betrayal, and complicated redemption arcs to know that truth is not always liberating. Sometimes, truth detonates. Sometimes, truth arrives too late to heal, and instead forces everyone to inventory the years that were stolen from them. Her decision to seek Tracy's guidance reveals how deeply she understands the emotional danger of what lies ahead. Tracy represents reflection, empathy, and a steadier moral center than most people in this world can offer. Lily needs that because her own instincts are torn. She wants to help Malcolm, perhaps even help bridge the gap between Malcolm and Holden, but she also knows that pushing reconciliation too quickly can become another form of violence when the injured person has not yet had time to feel betrayed. For Malcolm, the revelation threatens to become a humiliation of memory. Men like him can survive scandal more easily than regret. Regret lingers. Regret rewrites old smiles, old absences, old missed chances until a person can no longer remember his own life without also remembering what was missing from it. If Holden truly has a connection to him, Malcolm will not only face anger from the younger man, he will face the unbearable thought that some instinctive recognition, some unexplained emotional pull, may have always existed beneath the surface without ever being named. Stephanie, too, becomes vulnerable in a way that no polished return can disguise. Whatever she buried it for a reason. But reasons do not stay noble forever. Once the fallout begins, self-protection can look indistinguishable from selfishness, and old fear can look a great deal like deliberate theft. While Genoa City chokes on inheritance, suspicion, and emotional debris, Las Vegas becomes the stage for a more immediate form of danger. Adam descends deeper into the identity of Spider, and what makes that descent so disturbing is that it no longer feels purely performative. Adam has always contained multitudes, reinventions, shadows he could weaponize when necessary. But every return to a darker self carries the risk that the performance will begin to reveal genuine appetite. Riza understands that. She does not seduce Adam with simple attraction. She seduces him with permission. Around her, Adam can stop pretending he is healed, reformed, above his worst instincts. Around her, the ruthless intelligence and thrill-seeking darkness inside him are not flaws to suppress but assets to sharpen. That is why Chelsea's fear is so justified. She is not merely afraid that Adam is playing a role for strategic reasons. She is afraid that some part of him is relieved to be back inside that role. Riza is not dangerous because she is glamorous or manipulative in the obvious sense. She is dangerous because she knows how to read hunger, and Adam is starving for control. In a life full of judgment, disappointment, and the burden of proving he is no longer the man everyone feared, Vegas offers him a more seductive promise. Stop apologizing for what you are. Stop splitting yourself in half. Stop begging for trust from people who will always be waiting for your relapse. That message slides into Adam's mind with toxic efficiency. Every intimate moment with Riza, every calculated touch, every late-night maneuver is not only part of the con, it is part of a psychological seduction that threatens to pull him away from the fragile identity he has been trying to build with Chelsea. The longer Adam stays in that environment, the harder it becomes to tell where strategy ends and surrender begins. Nick sees this danger from a different angle, and that angle infuriates him because it forces him into familiar family exhaustion. He has spent too much of his life cleaning up after the disasters that follow Newman men, when pride, secrecy, and recklessness combine. Watching Adam slip deeper into Spider's orbit does not fill Nick with smugness. It fills him with resentment and dread. He questions whether Adam truly intends to stop before permanent damage is done, whether his brother understands that playing with corruption is not the same thing as mastering it. Yet Nick's concern is complicated by his own crisis. Matt Clark is not simply lurking in the background as another villain to outmaneuver. He is building a trap with personal precision, narrowing Nick's options and forcing him toward a confrontation he may not be able to avoid. Matt's strength lies in psychological warfare. He understands that the most effective trap is the one that convinces the victim he is choosing between survival and moral compromise. If Nick is being pushed into a corner, it will not just be through physical threat. It will be through pressure on his conscience, his family, his history of trying to be the stable brother in a family addicted to disaster. Matt wants Nick off balance, reactive, angry enough to make mistakes. He wants to convert Nick's protective instincts into a weapon against him. As danger escalates, Nick's greatest vulnerability is not fear, it is rage. Once Nick believes the people he loves are being targeted, the careful line between restraint and vengeance begins to blur. He may tell himself he is acting out of necessity, but necessity is often the first story people tell themselves before they justify becoming something harsher. Chelsea feels the entire Vegas nightmare through the most intimate terror available to her. The fear of losing Adam not to death, but to transformation. She knows what Adam looks like when he is fighting for redemption. And she knows the colder version too. The one who can compartmentalize affection, tell himself lies in the name of strategy, and rationalize emotional damage as collateral. Her anxiety grows because she understands that identity is not a switch. Adam does not simply become Spider or stop being Spider. He slides. He bargains. He allows the darker persona to solve a problem, then another, until the distinction between who he is and what he is pretending to be becomes nearly meaningless. Chelsea's fear of going to Vegas is tied to the possibility that once she sees the truth with her own eyes, she may be unable to deny it anymore. And if she finds Adam entangled with Riza in ways too intimate to excuse, the betrayal will not feel limited to physical closeness. It will feel existential. It will mean the future she has been trying to believe in was never as secure as she hoped. Victor, meanwhile, remains the gravitational center around which many of these schemes rotate. And that position carries its own rot. Powerful men often believe survival proves righteousness. Victor has lived so long by that principle that he no longer distinguishes between being feared and being correct. That makes him formidable, but it also leaves him vulnerable in an unexpected way. He has generated so many enemies, so many people nursing private humiliations and public defeats, that the line of attack against him is no longer singular. Kane wants him toppled. Jack wants him wounded. Matt may want him dead. Even people who are not actively plotting against Victor are exhausted by the space he occupies in every conflict. The irony is that Victor may never appear more secure than when danger is closest, because certainty is one of his most weaponized habits. But certainty can calcify into blindness. If he believes his enemies are too fractured to align, he may not recognize that chaos itself can be an alliance. What makes the coming conflict so explosive is that none of these characters are operating from clean motives. Jack wants love restored and revenge satisfied. Diane wants dignity preserved but still aches for the marriage she cannot blindly trust. Kane wants justice against Victor but also craves the ego reward of conquest. Holden wants honesty yet risks being drawn deeper into the game by telling the truth. Claire wants agency in a world where everyone treats her as symbolic property in a larger war. Phyllis wants relevance, access, maybe power, maybe desire, maybe all of it. Lily wants healing, but healing cannot be forced. Malcolm may want connection, but connection built on years of silence arrives soaked in pain. Adam wants control, but is tempted by surrender to his own worst instincts. Nick wants protection, but protection has begun to look like aggression. Chelsea wants reassurance, yet the truth she fears may be unavoidable. Patty wants Jack, but beneath that desire lies the darker craving to prove she can still destroy peace just by touching it. Matt wants domination through fear, and Victor wants to remain untouchable, which may be the most dangerous fantasy of all. As these motives collide, the 2 weeks ahead become less about any single plot twist and more about a chain reaction of emotional detonations. A confession in one corner of Genoa City can provoke a retaliation in another. A secret uncovered about parentage can destabilize loyalties already strained by business warfare. A romantic fracture can become the opening an enemy needs. A trip to Las Vegas can alter the balance of relationships back home. The town begins to feel like a system under too much pressure, every crack widening at once, every person one bad decision away from becoming the instrument of someone else's ruin. Jack may attempt grand gestures to win Diane back, but the more desperate he becomes, the more easily desperation can be exploited by Patty and anyone allied with her. Kane may tell himself he is executing a brilliant campaign, Yet the refusal of Holden and the unpredictability of people like Phyllis threaten to prove that no strategy survives intact once pride enters the room. Lily may try to act as a bridge in the Malcolm-Stephanie Holden crisis, only to discover that some wounds resent being managed and need space to burn before they can be named. Adam may believe he can enter darkness and return at will, but Chelsea's possible arrival in Vegas could force a reckoning at the exact moment he is least prepared to defend the integrity of his choices. Nick may walk straight into Matt's trap out of love, anger, or both, and by the time he realizes how carefully he has been maneuvered, escape may require sacrifices that haunt him long after the confrontation ends. And hovering over all of it is the brutal truth that some damage, once done, cannot be reversed by apology, explanation, or even victory. That is what makes this chapter of Y&R feel so merciless. The looming disasters are not only about who will win or lose, they are about what will be left of these people after their worst instincts have been activated. Revenge always promises clarity, but more often it produces residue. Guilt, isolation, collateral harm, the horrifying realization that becoming powerful enough to destroy an enemy often means destroying the parts of oneself that once deserved saving. These next 2 weeks threaten to test every relationship against that truth. By the time the dust begins to settle, Genoa City may not look devastated from the outside. The mansions will still stand, the offices will still gleam, the family names will still carry weight. But beneath that polished surface, something more alarming may have taken hold. Trust will have thinned, old stories will have been rewritten, new enemies will have been born from private heartbreak, and the people who survived the traps, the attacks, and the revelations may discover that survival itself comes with a cost far more intimate than public defeat. In this town, the most savage wars are never fought only in boardrooms or back alleys. They are fought inside hearts already cracked by pride, obsession, love, and the unbearable need to matter. Over these 2 weeks, that inner war is about to become impossible to hide.